Join me today as I prune up not just one green carpet juniper, but two, with some dead work and some wiring. Enjoy. I really need to update that intro. It's quite old now. So yeah, welcome to the video. So I'm just going to show you some old videos of these trees, which is from spring, where I got them out of their growing containers and put them into smaller pots with better soil to grow them on. Both trees didn't have many roots when I repotted them. They're still quite weak in the pot, and you'll see that as we go into the later parts of the video. As you can see, these trees have grown on quite well, and now there's even roots coming out the bottom of the pot, which I'm just going to cut away there. So yeah, these trees have had quite a good year of growing. You know, junipers aren't really known for strong roots. All their strength comes from their foliage, so these trees are still quite wobbly in the pot. Obviously the roots haven't taken over the pot yet. I have left them to grow all year. There's a bit of dieback on some places. But yeah, these just need a general clean up and a bit of a tidy up. I mean, the first one that we have here is a marmate tree. And it's a bit too big for a marmate. Or at least the size of some of the branches, especially the apex right now. So over time I need to replace that to bring the scale down. So with the wire off, I'm just thinking about future plans here. You know, I left quite a lot of foliage on this when I repotted it. As I said, junipers get all their strength from their foliage, not their root system, so I didn't want to cut off too much when I started last time, knowing that I was going to repot it in the spring. But as you can see, it's bounced back fine. There's lots of new growth. A bit too much new growth. So I'm thinking of removing this back branch here, which I'm going to do. And that just opens more space for the other branches. I find with marmate trees, when you look at other either YouTube creators or artists, I usually look at Bonsai. He's quite a good marmate kind of artist. You find that there aren't many branches, like defining branches kind of thing. Obviously, if you look at bigger trees, they'll usually have, I don't know, I can't really count how many branches they have, but you'll see what I mean. The structure of the trees, the structure of the branches, there's quite a few. With marmate, you only really have about 2 or 3 branches, and then the apex. And because it's such a small kind of tree, you have to keep on cutting these branches down before they thicken up too much to keep the scale intact. So of course, I usually go through objectively pruning first, and this will be any kind of growth that's growing down, any growth that's growing in towards a tree, or any growth that's going to hinder the structure of the tree. In terms of, you know, rectifying areas of 3 branches to 2, just for biopurification, then it stops any kind of swelling in that area as well. And green carpet junipers, I find, do like to cascade quite naturally. I think I should really lean into that with some of the work that I'm doing with these. Letting these branches cascade as they naturally do on this species, rather than trying to fight it and wire everything into a different position than what it's used to. As you can see, this tree leans very far forward. I think over time I'm going to have to pick a new leader and change this apex a lot. I like the trunk. I quite like the base. But as you can see, at the top part of the apex there, after that dog leg, looks a little bit strange. I'm also thinking about what I can do with this apex, where I can move it to. This tree does need a little bit of wire in places, the bottom two branches are kind of looking a bit pom-pomish. Now they don't come off the same place of the trunk. The branch on the right comes from further back, and then the one on the left comes further forward. And some of these back branches aren't really needed. Some of these little back branch growths here, so I'm just removing them. Any kind of crotch growth as well, I'm not looking to add branches in that area. And now I'm just going to try and clean up some of the old cuts there. Now unfortunately, these branch cutters I've got are very blunt. I've used them for the past 2 or 3 years on roots and a wire, which I shouldn't be doing. But yeah, because of that, they've got quite blunt, so I do need to sharpen them. Now I did have actual knob cutters, concave ones, which were really great. I only paid about £15 for them, I think, on Amazon. So obviously with that, the tool strength isn't great. I ended up trying to cut off a branch that was way too thick. It was actually on my Scots pine, and I bent them, so I've got to replace them over time. There's also some branches on this tree, like the one I just removed there, where I left them on the tree, obviously for the strength purposes. Didn't want to remove too much at first. And again, as always, you know, this isn't going to be a finished tree by the end of this video. I hope that's not what you're trying to watch for. Anyone new to this art will soon realise that it takes a lot of patience and a lot of time to build a good tree. I wouldn't say great yet. This apex has troubled me for some time, and I've been looking at this tree for the past couple of weeks on the bench as it's sit there frozen, thinking where can I actually move this tree to. But sometimes it isn't until you sit down that you actually have an idea. Now being a juniper, these are quite flexible, so I'm kind of manhandling this apex quite a lot, but it's quite a young, well, apex branch essentially. So as I said earlier, the roots aren't really filling this pot just now, so the tree is quite wobbly in the pot. So you'll notice that when I'm wiring these branches, I'm trying to hold the tree in the pot just to make sure that I don't break any kind of new roots that are growing. There wasn't really any kind of root mass to actually tie this tree down into this pot. That was my issue when I repotted it. So just some final cuts here, now that I've wired it to where I want it to be for now. You know, there's nothing wrong with pruning once, wiring, pruning again. You know, every time you go through this work, you can keep on making it better each time. And I think that just about wraps us up for this tree. Now later on in this video, I'm going to come back to do some Deadwood work on the trunk. Just give it a bit more interest, you know, it's quite a boring tree for a juniper, let's say, just with how it's going right now. Now eventually, obviously, this should look a lot better. Give it a year or two, and we'll see, but for now, this is where we're at. Then moving on to tree number 2. So it's actually my first green carpet juniper that I bought, and I was so happy with the way that I styled it when I first got it. For where I was at the time, it was quite a big jump in terms of styling and understanding the kind of shape that a tree needs to be in, especially for junipers as well. Like, I have always struggled with the evergreen, but anything like junipers, pines, I've struggled to wrap my head around just how you have to style them and how you can get them to look like a miniature tree. You know, we're always going for that kind of conical shape, of course, and trying to add age to a very young tree. This tree's probably, I'd imagine, 3, maybe 4 years old. It wouldn't be old at all. I'm just removing some of the wire there. You can see the wire's lost its, is it annealment? Basically it was down to pure aluminium because I left it on for the whole year. So yeah, I just kind of evolved and stepped up on this tree, I find. This tree is also in, I think it used to be in one of my old intros. I'll try and find the picture of that. So yeah, again, this tree kind of pushed out very well as well. It's responded well to the repot. There was structural issues on it from the beginning, which I didn't want to correct at the time, due to knowing I was going to repot it, like that elbow branch there. I'm hoping to come back today and correct some of that. Now, of course, we are still in winter. I actually had to thaw these out for, I don't know, about 6 hours before working on them, defrosting trees. But you know, the weather's warming up now again, so it isn't down to -4s, -5s, so that shouldn't be too bad. Just pruning away some dead roots, dried out roots from the repot here as well. The root base on this tree isn't great. At some point I'm going to have to try and grow roots from a different area, maybe pot it deeper. Try and grow them from about this area, because I'm not a great fan of the root base on this. So I also done some Deadwood work on this when I first styled it, and I kind of went a bit crazy with it. I saw there was a tree on Google. I think I just saw it on images. Sometimes I just Google bonsai tree and just have a look around, looking for inspiration, you know. And yeah, I just saw these kind of mad Deadwood kind of branches, and they're kind of like false apexes in a way, right? It's like a leader that tried to take over the leader that we have, or it was the leader, and then it died back and it created a new leader. So I'm just obviously reducing this foliage back to interior kind of buds or branches that I want to grow, giving it a bit of space for light for springtime. Essentially cutting off any kind of growth that's going to kind of waste the tree's energy or time. It's also important to prune marmate trees fairly regularly, because you are trying to keep it compact and small, and that is only done by pruning over and over and over again. Now it does get to a point on marmate kind of sized trees where, and by the way, this is actually a bit oversized for marmate. My plan is the branch that you're seeing kind of in the middle of the tree there, the apex essentially will become Deadwood as well. I'm going to reduce that back, and then the branch in the middle there is actually going to become the new leader. I'm waiting for it to thicken up before I create Deadwood off of that. That's my future plan revealed. But yeah, essentially you're trying to keep these trees into a marmate kind of size, and the only way you can do that is by cutting back branches every now and then. This branch on the right eventually might have to go, branch on the left, and I'll grow a new one in. You just keep on replacing branches essentially. Now I'm thinking about what to do with this left-hand branch here. I was debating to cut that off completely and create some asymmetry. The issue is I don't really like the shape of it on the right so far. That could use some work, so I think what I'll do now is I'm going to keep it, but I'm going to try and bend it. So I'm going to put some wire onto this tree. Just see if I can get it more into scale, so the right branch and the left branch are coming around for essentially a hug. That's what I like to call it. Again, letting the viewer into the tree rather than pushing them away from it. And it was a bit too wide anyway for the trunk size. You know, when you talk about scale, you're looking at how thick the branches are compared to how thick the trunk is. How thick the trunk is for how tall the tree is. You know, I think it's 1 in 6 is supposed to be. Obviously now these aren't hard, fast rules, right? You know, I'm not entering any Kokafu shows anytime soon, of course. No one's going to come around and arrest me for not following these rules, but they're rules for a reason. It's because it does genuinely look its best when you can follow this kind of scale. It makes it look more realistic, let's say. You know, the difference between, let's say, what it's looked like when I first bought it was just a little bush, and it becoming a bonsai is that it actually passes semi-realistically as a tree in nature. And that can be subjective. So I'm quite happy with how this looks, styling wise. I think I brought it back into scale quite well. I still think the tree's too tall for the trunk size. And as I say, there's two ways I can combat that, right? I can move the tree into a bigger pot and grow the base out, like grow the trunk out, using a sacrificial leader, something like that. Or I can remove the apex of the tree and make it a short tree. But only time will tell with that, so we'll see how it goes this year in terms of growing. So back to my first little marmite tree. Just going to start creating some deadwood here. So this is a set of tools that I got as a gift, but I believe they're quite cheap, you know, like £10-15 for the whole set. And this is supposed to be like a proper wood carving set, and I believe it's more for making little kind of like dolls or whatever else people make out of wood. I've never really looked into that art form, but they're also great for making gin. Deadwood, gin, they're great for stripping branch, they're really sharp. It just means I don't have to mess around with like a scalpel blade or anything like that. So this route at the front is kind of like a crossing route, and in the bonsai world that probably isn't a great thing, but I actually quite like it as a little feature. When you look at trees in nature and people, we all have our flaws, right? And I think it brings a bit of nature to it when you can show off a flaw rather than remove all of the flaws. Now, of course, when I say show off, I don't mean I'm making it the main part of the tree, but it's just something to catch your eye there, and it brings you into the base of the tree, and it gets you looking at the tree straight away. And the same idea goes for the deadwood that I'm creating here on the trunk. It's supposed to invite you into this part of the tree, as the trunk's at the back of the tree technically in perspective reasons. It will already bring your eye to that area, and then from there you can kind of look around the tree from there. That's just part of getting people to look where you want them to look, and that's something I'm looking more into as I develop myself in bonsai. You know, thinking about the viewers aspect of it. After all, it is an art form of expression, and I would like to one day show these trees either in a club setting or some kind of mini show. In fact, there is actually a club quite close to me that a long time subscriber and friend, Michelle, who also donates 50% of the trees I have are probably from Michelle, so I'll always shout her out. She's also joined this club, and she's going to some shows this year, and I haven't been to any shows yet, so I'm thinking this year is the year that I kind of bite the bullet and join a club and get to some shows and further my knowledge, right? Because I can watch YouTube, I can read books, and I can look online, but I find that in person kind of advice and learning is probably the best. So with the lime sulphur, this is something I bought off of eBay about 3 years ago. It's just a little white bottle, probably about 200 millilitres, and it's lasted me all that time. I don't really make much deadwood, but I try and paint it once a year just to keep it preserved and keep that difference between the wood colour and the deadwood itself. So the deadwood kind of bleaches out over time and goes white. So one final look at this tree here before we move back onto the second one, or the bigger one, and just before and after. And then back onto the bigger tree. So funny enough, I did actually lime sulphur this deadwood, but the recording of it wasn't even looking at the tree, so I've deleted the recording of it. So again, that's before and after. If you enjoyed today's video, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell notification for future videos. I'll see you soon.